And so if you can welcome to the stage Richard Smedley, who's going to be telling us about thinking about money, apparently. We haven't got one of your slides, I'm afraid.
Okay, so we all think about money, not having enough, how to make even more, what to spend it on. Not many people think about money. We're like fish in water. Our world is mediated through money, and we never think about it. Philosophically, scientifically, sociologically. What's it all about? What we think we know about money often turns out not to be true. School books, even university economic textbooks tell, well, post-truth facts like the myth of barter about money came about because, well, it's very difficult to go and buy a bag of hazelnuts and get change from a mammoth. But before we had money, society wasn't like that. I mean, hunting a mammoth takes cooperation, it takes trust. And early societies were built on ledgers kept in people's heads in pre-literate times, but ledgers of trust. Medieval kings, 1,000 years before Bitcoin, would mark out debts to their subjects to feed and supply their army on sticks, split them in half, a pre-digital form of signing, and take them back as currency. Now, that was the government creating money, and we have it in the back of our minds that the government does create money, but this stuff, notes, coins, it's only 2 or 3% of money. 97% and more is created by the four create money. Each time they make a loan, it's just digits, backed by nothing more than the Bank of England saying, yeah, we back these banks, trust them. Although it can go wrong sometimes, as it did a few years ago, particularly when it turns out that the people that rule us, they don't have any idea how money's created. In fact, only 1 in 10 MPs understand that money can be created by something other than the government, and that's from the government. This slide is from the Positive Money campaign, who are trying to change things. I got this from Frank from that campaign, as I did with the contrived example coming up. Now, this is the part where we actually stop and let the audience do a thinking. Sorry, it's a bit of a contrived exercise, but imagine we've all got wrecked on a desert island, not just the 80 of us here, but say 5,000 strangers, big cruise ship, and some Charlie pipes up, what are we going to do about money? As if that's the main thing to worry about. You Douglas Adams fans will be thinking Golga Frinchens here. But, so a committee is set up and it says, well, yeah, we make this money, shall we lend it out to people with good ideas, take it back as interest? Should we give it to people who are really doing good for our community? Or should we just share it out, give everyone some of it? Now, I don't know which one of those ideas appeals to people the most, but it doesn't really matter, because if you've even thought about this for 2 seconds, you've put more time into thinking about what money's for than most MPs and rulers in the last 1,000 years. Money wasn't designed by smart people to solve a problem. It developed with various people grabbing sort of power and control over it in ways over history. And we have this conflated idea. Is it a unit of exchange? Does it recognise the work we do? Is it a store of value? And we might think it's all of these, but they contradict each other. So as I say, you know, MPs, people that make the decisions, they don't understand money either. And that can lead to some poor decisions, such as 45 years ago, until when only building societies could lend out for mortgages, for property, for houses. And if you see here, after this, suddenly the amount of money created by banks shoots up, because suddenly banks can get involved and speculate instead of building societies that had to hold these things as deposits. But you might think it's okay, all this money going into the economy from banks because it helps the economy. That's another myth that we have. But half of the money is property speculation, and we know what that's done. We've seen property go from twice the annual income to 8 or 10 times the annual income over most of this country. Only a 12th of it goes into the real economy to help businesses, and of course that has to go back to the banks as interest on all of these loans. And maybe you think that Bitcoin will save us. Well, Bitcoin is another store of value, and that can lead to hoarding and not exchange. I'm just leaving you with questions. So there are places to get answers. Positive Money has an interesting campaign, but also ho.io/MOOC, really interesting MOOC from the University of Cumbria on money and society, running again this summer. Thank you very much.
Yeah, a very kind of, I don't know, thought-provoking one to kick things off. I hope it wasn't too confusing for everybody. Far too much to think about now, but there'll be other things to think about as well. And the next thing, I mean, maybe if it made you annoyed thinking about all the money and who's got control of it and stuff, then the next speaker might be able to help with this. So the second speaker we've got tonight is PJ Smith, and he is going to come up and tell us about that thing you think you're pissed off about. I hope. Yes. Cool.
Hello everyone, I'm scared. I feel like I was coerced into this, but I'm here now, no going back. Little introduction, mine's about a series of events that happened to me about 10 years ago that completely changed my life. I'll take you through them now through a series of images. So this is a clip from a film called Enlightening, which is one of the greatest films ever. Day in the life of these three lads on the outskirts of Paris. They think their problem is the police, but there's lots going on. Lack of education, drugs, blah, blah. Jose Mourinho, one of the most successful managers ever, handsome, smart, one of the best, wins everything. And then last season, Chelsea ran into a run of results that were no good, and he crumbled. He blamed the referee, blamed everyone, and he lost me respect. This survey was in Australia. They asked some students, what do you want to make you happy? They all said money. They said, what will that money give you? And then they said happiness, peace, contentment. That should have been the answer to the first question. Question I was asked about 10 years ago, do you want to be right or happy? Because I always wanted to be right, I always wanted to argue, and I always wanted to have the last word, and regardless of whether I was right or not, I was always left unhappy. Something that I've kind of, this is one of those crap motivational quotes, but it never fails me. If I take the easy option, my life's going to get hard, and if I take the hard option, my life's going to get much easier. Remember that one. I work with people who've been in the forces, and a lot of them blame the army for the way their lives have turned out. But actually it's like pre-existing trauma before they even go in, and there's lots going on, and we're going to kind of move into that now. Liverpool, hated the place, blamed it for absolutely everything that was wrong with my life, had to get out, and as I stand here today, I love it. I would never want to live anywhere else, but it's exactly the same city with the same people and the same goings on. Little analogy, if I've got a sore shoulder at work and my workmate every day bangs my shoulder, how's it going? And I think I'm going to fucking get you one day. The answer is, don't get them, just get your shoulder seen to. And they can't do it. He's a bit of a curveball. He's in there, he doesn't know why he's pissed off, because he's a psychopath. And I know that because I've read the psychopath test, and I'm diagnosing absolutely everyone at the moment. It's all right. Used to think that I hated arrogant and rich and flamboyant people. The truth is, I didn't. It just made me realise my own insecurities and jealousy and envy and all these traits that were no good for me. Alcoholics are a funny bunch. I am one, by the way, so I can say this. They think that alcohol, we think that alcohol is our problem, and it's not. It's the way they behave. It's personality traits that they've got that will always lead them to drink. Those personality traits are like a domino effect. They can't see the dominoes falling over, and they end up with a drink in their hand and wonder why. Fucking hell, wow. That was a long 15 seconds. This is a boiler system. On the bottom there, the water supply valve. If that breaks, most people would go straight for that. But actually, the problem could be anywhere on that. You've kind of got to go back a bit. And if I've taught this through right, leads us there yet, man. The family system is where you learn absolutely everything. Unwritten rules, things that get passed down from generation to generation without you knowing. I found that out 10 years ago. He's in there because he doesn't actually stand for anything. He fights against things. And I have a motto that it's much better to stand for something than fight against things. Fuck him anyway. Yeah, pointing, blaming, making excuses. Every time I do that, there's just him, her, this, that. Where am I in that? And I'm just absolving myself from responsibility. That's all I ever used to do. These days, these images are pure sixth form, aren't they? But I just look at the root. What's going on? Why do I feel like this? Where's it come from? If I go back a bit, I'll find it. And this is a metaphorical and literal mirror. None of you will have them in your bathroom. So metaphorically, I had to look in the mirror. I had to look at myself. And literally, I can look at myself now. I'm all right with what looks back, but I never used to be. The world is yours. That's what I've realised as a result of all that. And that's still one of the greatest films I've ever seen. Dramatic pause. Yeah, man.
That was great. Thanks for that. I really enjoyed that one. So our next speaker is another previous speaker as well. And Neil tells me that her YouTube hits are through the roof on her previous talk. Doing really well, apparently. But today she's going to be telling us about life after motherhood. So if you can welcome to the stage Priya Jane.
Hi everyone. How many of you have got kids? Okay, rest can sympathize with them. So why do people go for kids? Because they believe in the myth that children are a gift of God. The moment they realize they unwrap the gift, their game is over. It's really complicated. 15-second slide. Some people in this world cannot tolerate others being happy, including me. So we motivate others to go for kids. I should not be the last person to suffer. Everybody sitting here should suffer in life. So I tell them to go to jail. When you are bored of your partner, you actually don't know what to do in life now. Let's make a baby. Create something out of box. Create something called children that keeps on distracting you from your routine life. Then came the D-Day in my life, 12 December 2012. I got a baby boy. That day and today, I no more relate myself with sun and earth. My days and night are not controlled by revolution of earth. They're controlled by the boss baby. And this is the first time in life I'm realizing my own creation is not controlled by me. You know, parenting is the free consultation activity done in every society. I'm just trying to learn making my own decisions. And my house is no more clean and neat. And you know, I'm very happy because I don't have to give excuses to have an untidy house. But yes, I can't walk barefoot in my own house. There are Legos spreading all over. And this is the gift. You always go in a good company. Wherever you go, the network follows. Even when I go to toilet, my child is standing outside waiting for me. And he asked me a multi-million question. Mom, what are you doing there? And he is the follower of Dorothy Parker. So he keep on asking me. I replied him once, I'm playing football. I replied him once, I'm playing football. He told me, how did you get my red football inside? And he gave me an advice that it's slippery over there, so be careful. Congratulations to all of you, because we are living in an age nobody ever lived. Even Darwin didn't know there will be an evolution like this. So I'm raising a digital child. I don't have any role model to follow, so I'm creating my own specimen. I'm just teaching him to balance the life between real and virtual world. So I'm teaching him to go away from phones and gadgets as far as he can. The reasons kids cry, sometimes there are very important reasons. This child is crying because he cannot find his rubber ducky. And that one is crying because the goldfish in his hand does not have the same eyes as is printed on the paper, on the printing paper. This man is crying because Skype video with the grandma and grandpa froze. He doesn't understand the obvious reason. You can't keep on chatting with your in-laws forever. And this girl is crying because she is not able to eat Lysol wipes in the dinner. When the child sleeps, that is the best moment of life. I don't do anything other than living my life queen size. I just sit in my bed and I do nothing. I seriously do nothing. This is the scene when babysitting is done by a man, and this is when it is done by a woman. To hell with shopping. I cannot go to grocery store with peace. It feels like a vacation if I go to grocery store without my child. And this is how I deal with my problems. Swami Vivekananda, an Indian scholar, has said that wherever books are read, the place becomes heaven. I'm trying to make my house heaven, to making him read on my lap. My child knows 100 ways of distracting your mother. He can write a book over this topic. Whenever I try to teach him fish, he tells me how many colors of fish are found in this world, how the fish lives in the water, and he even tried to paint a fish. The moment I realized we were reading phonics, it's too late. I didn't lose myself, I found myself. Because when the child is born are the parents. We learn to have patience with them. We learn to survive failures with them. The decision of having a child is a difficult decision, but they will make you ready. Nobody is ever ready. This is the only moment in life when you are tired and happy together. Before having my child, I was not incomplete because I didn't know there is a space exists in me. There is a space exists in me that is required to be fulfilled. And believe me, guys, there is nothing more happiness in this world having a child. A child is not a decision. It is really a gift of God. Your life is not over. It is just the beginning. Thank you.
Thanks for that prayer. Is the speaker? Yeah, the microphone's on. That's all good. Yeah, so that was warnings about having children, and then the next speaker is also, I think, giving us warnings, at least judging by the title of the talk. So if you can welcome to the stage Ali Harwood, who's going to tell us that here be dragons.
Thank you. Here be dragons, let's map out their forms in the earth, air, fire and seas. Let's not bury our heads, but instead raise them up, look around 360 degrees. Once entombed alive, 2 dragons survived, they should be coming up in a minute, in the shadow of Snowdon in Wales. Shaking fortress foundations, they fought like 2 nations, red outshone white and prevails. Let's wheel back in time and cross the Atlantic, where Quetzalcoatl into Mesoamerican skies, where Quetzalcoatl, the volitant serpent, fathers the wind as he flies. A beast that secretes red-hot flames from its tail, that's Evren in Turkey today. With heat will come light, there's the rub, we ignite, to the ground our universe raised. The Naga Apalala swam in Peshawar, once human, betrayed, then reborn. He flooded the crops till persuaded to stop by the Buddha who softened his storms. And what of creation? Mesopotamian. In Babylon, Tiamat ruled. That goddess of chaos, self-made dragoness, wreaked havoc till by Marduk was schooled. Shh. Merit Saga, lover of silence, half woman, half serpent, divine. On top of her world at the Theban necropolis, spat venom at robbers of shrines. Now a subtle snake awaited Eve in the midst of Eden tree, awakened her and Adam too to see life's mysteries. St. George and the dragon, one being, a beast, their stories as old as our kind. The dragon is chaos, the sword is an order. Seek with your truth and you'll find. We wind up in China where dragons are long and held in high esteem. On doorways, on clothes, and as tiles in mahjong, there they reign supreme. In the Zodiac story, the dragon shunned glory to help the poor rabbit below. The river was raging, the bunny was drifting, so the dragon put things right with a blow. Dragons in China are subtle and strong. They are deep and unending, alive. Made of eagle and tiger and snake and forever, attention brings a mind that is hive. Back down on earth with a bump and bad breath, the Komodo dragon revealed. It eats monkeys and horses and humans to death. Indonesian eyes are kept peeled. Want more of a monster? The Titanosaur, the largest land dragon found yet. As long as 4 buses with half-a-ton femurs, not suitable for a pet. More ancient and massive by many more times. Look up in the sky to find Draco, guarding a garden of apples of gold. From Hercules, what a mistake-o. Dragons are hybrids of creatures that eat us in human predator guise. Sharp features like claws need a sharp response. To flinch is old and wise. Can dragons be people? My guess is yes. Catch them if you can. Before they grow to monster mode, tame the beast in man. As well as without, we must look within, where dragons we will see. I shine a light into my dark to tame the beast in me. We all here have our dragons, and they go by different names, called Giant, Fear, or Blue, or Bob. Let's face them, just the same. Hic sunt dracones, yes, there be some dragons here, but armed with truth and bravery, our gold, it will appear. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm not sure, but I think that might be the first time we've had poetry. We've had like singing in the past. I think that might be the first part. That's cool. Good to see that even after 30 we can still break new ground. Now our next speaker is up speaking for the first time at Ignite, and I don't know if there are any dragons in the Ukraine, but maybe we'll find out. We're going to learn about 12 things that we might not know about Ukraine from Kieran Reed.
Thank you. Well, you know a lot more now about Ukraine than you did before Eurovision, but I hope to tell you some things that you might not know. I've spent 6 months living and working in Ukraine over the last 3 years. First as an international election monitor, as an election observer, and secondly as an honorary volunteer visiting professor at Zaporizhzhia National University in southeast Ukraine. You have the Golden Domes, you have all the Soviet and Russian influence, but Ukraine is also a modern country with lots to offer. There is a war in Ukraine, but it is only in 10% of the country, only in parts of these two regions in the far southeast where Russian forces occupy 5% of the country. Some traditions in Ukraine might seem old-fashioned. The Vyshyvanka shirt is happily worn by young and old alike on various national days in male and female versions. Universities are quite like universities in the UK, but they are still very Soviet, very top-down, less independent learning. And we don't have official Miss University contests involving the female students parading in their swimwear. I missed the bodybuilding version of the male equivalent, but the students are very involved in creative activities. They have giant shopping malls, more in the city I was in first than in Liverpool. They've got big supermarkets and small, but everything is in Cyrillic, or what they call Cyrillic, so I often buy the wrong thing by mistake because I'm not very good at my Cyrillic alphabet. There is good tea and coffee everywhere, which is ironic because they think there'll be good tea and coffee in England. They have much better leaf tea in Ukraine. Even in this little town of Savron, 200 kilometers north of Odessa, where a ship's officer, of course, recently returned from Liverpool, stopped me to give me directions. And in the wonderful city of Odessa itself, on Derebaskaya Street, the poshest McDonald's I've ever been to serves good quality leaf tea. But just like all those foreigners on the continent, if you buy the tea in tea bags, it's generally terrible. Cars and roads. You see every type of expensive German or Japanese car. You see the 4x4 SUVs with blacked out windows standard. You see Soviet cars in pristine condition. And given that the roads outside the cities are absolutely terrible, it is, of course, the old Soviet cars that do much better on them. So Ukraine has all these influences. It is Russian, Soviet, it is modern Ukrainian, it is Eastern and Central European. There are some Ukrainian national myths being created. There are some extreme nationalists in Ukraine, but very few. Most people are friendly and welcoming. Communist symbols have been banned, or more specifically, the symbols of totalitarian regimes have been banned. So the big Lenin statue in Zaporizhzhia was removed last year. I argued that they should keep it because it's great for tourists, but Lenin is gone. Lenin Prospect, Lenin Avenue, has been renamed Cathedral Avenue. But you still have the Soviet architecture. You have war memorials like here from lots of conflicts, but the huge volumes of names from the World War II, the Great Patriotic War, or the Afghanistan War are very sobering. Food might surprise you. Yes, they have borscht, they do have Kievsky cutlet, chicken Kiev, they have salads, they have sausage and cheese. They eat dried fish with beer, which I think is quite strange. But they're obsessed with pizza, with Italian, with kebab, with shawarma and shashlik, and sushi. There are more sushi restaurants than you could possibly imagine. But eating out is expensive. Some restaurants are very expensive, so most people eat at home or in picnics. Vodka, or horilka in Ukrainian, is complemented by the very good brandy. They call it all cognac. But you never drink alone, and you always eat when you're drinking. And I do advise not to get into the many rounds of toasts. Best avoided. Some things are as expensive as here, but many things are much cheaper. The cost of living is about a quarter of the price, but salaries for comparable professionals are about 1/8 of the salaries. So many professionals have to have 2 or 3 jobs. But that means for us that Ukraine is very inexpensive to go and visit. You can fly from London on British Airways, on Ukrainian International Airlines, or now on Ryanair as well. So if you want to see Ukraine, I recommend it. Do go and see for yourself. Ukraine is not just for Eurovision. Thank you.
in USSR. And good to see that I guessed right on what Dan's song would be. So if you haven't noticed all the kind of music at the end of stuff, Dan picked stuff that sort of ties in with with the tile, because that's the thing that all these going on. So I was guessing that maybe that was about the only Ukraine-related song that we could think of. Anyway, our next speaker is Aaron Ellis. And he's going to be telling us about he's going to be asking whether entrepreneurs can change politics more than politicians can. So let's find out.
Hi, everyone. This is quite an old question in politics, but I think it's being given fresh relevance by sort of the crazy events of the last 2 years. But I want to try and approach it in a sort of new, unusual angle. There's quite a long history of entrepreneurs going into politics and shaking things up. In the United States recently, there's been Michael Bloomberg in New York, and obviously Donald Trump. And there are now rumors that Mark Zuckerberg is thinking of running for president in 2020. There's also a very old critique of entrepreneurs thinking that running a country is like running a business. Obama argues that there's a distinct difference between the two. Governing a democracy is messy. Today I want to talk about a trend in the opposite direction, which is politicos becoming entrepreneurs to try to create change that way. In January, Obama's old communications team launched a media company to try and help people become activists. I'm part of this trend. For years, I was a perfectly happy politico. In 2015, I managed the general election campaign. Last year, I ran to be a councillor. And I could have been on the verge of becoming an MP right now, but then this happened. And during the referendum, I realized that I cared more about Britain staying in the EU than I did about the success of the Tory party. And I worried about what Brexit said about our country. So I started a business to help progressives. So let's start from the beginning. Sociologists argue that human beings are homo duplex. We exist as individuals, but also exist as part of larger groups, which give our lives a deeper meaning. The moral psychologist Jonathan Haidt argues that this explains our attachment to sports teams and religions and political parties. They make us feel that aside from our daily lives, we're part of something bigger than ourselves. Apparently this is what Disraeli said when he became Prime Minister for the first time. And it's how sort of most ordinary people think about politicians. They just want to climb to the top and satisfy their lust for power. But it's actually more complicated than that. Like thousands of others, I bought into this deal, which is in exchange for my free time and energy and putting up with bureaucratic feuds, I could slowly become more powerful and get a chance to implement my ideas to make the world a better place. But again, Brexit destroyed that deal for me. I found that I didn't care about the benefits of the deal anymore, so there was no reason for me to accept the costs, especially as the Tory party went hard to the right. Rather than join another party and sign a new deal, I decided to start my own business. Strategy was what I was good at, so by lending my skills to whichever cause or candidate I liked and making their lives easier, I felt I could create change. If I joined another party to try and change things, I would have run up against this fact, which is that political parties are bureaucracies and they can frustrate fresh thinking and new ideas. In 2015, I was managing a campaign for the first time in my life. I was just 24, 25. And I had to deal with a local party that had lost every election since 1997, but believed that their retro way of doing things was the best and only way. When we had to send out letters asking for donations, the elderly agent and her husband were outraged that I had used bullet points to summarize why the election mattered, because they were used to sending out long letters. When the candidate and I decided to attack the Lib Dem with a leaflet tying him to Ed Miliband, the agent and her husband were shocked by it because they believe you should avoid mentioning your opponent. After the election, I helped set up Launch 22 Liverpool, and I was introduced to a world of people who were breaking down barriers and trying new ideas, and their success or failure depended on how good they were at their job, and I realized that that was what I wanted for myself. So can my kind of entrepreneur change politics more than politicians can? Well, I'm sort of still figuring this out for myself, but more broadly, I think the answer is sort of. We live in a parliamentary democracy, so the only way to create change is by a political party winning enough MPs to form a government and turn their ideas into action. Although this is something that, say, Corbynistas struggle with, it's sort of an inescapable political fact. Yeah, I think someone like me or Crooked Media or any other politically minded entrepreneur can do is introduce innovation from outside and that way try and make the world a better place. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Aaron. Yeah, lots of politics going on at the moment. Now we're on to our last talk of the first half, and it's another of our regulars, although I don't think he's spoken for a little while. So if we can welcome to the stage Michael McDonnell, who's going to be, Michael Marsh even, if I can read my notes properly. You get to look forward to Michael McDonnell in the next half. But it's Michael Marsh this time, who's going to be telling us about bad PR advertising on native, as opposed to bad comparing, which you've got at the moment.
Brilliant. Well, I'm Michael Someone, and whenever I give a talk here, I like to try and horrify you about the state of the news. And so I like to start, this is a graph here of subscriptions to the news. And if you look carefully, you'll see a very interesting trend about newspaper circulations. People aren't buying newspapers anymore. I guess people here don't really buy newspapers very often. Here are the biggest newspapers of our country over the last 30 years. As you can see, the trend is going in a very clear direction. People aren't buying newspapers. This is a problem because making the news, creating news costs money, and to fill the gap in the balance that isn't coming in from subscriptions, newspapers now have to take a lot of advertising. So you can see here from The Guardian, there's two very clear examples of newspaper advertising. We all know what we're looking for, these banner ads at the top, or flick through the newspapers, and by and large, you'll spot adverts. Dead simple, right? Not really. There's a problem. The average click-through rate of banner ads on websites is about 0.6%, and I think that's just people who click it accidentally, or basically it's your mum on the internet who doesn't know what she's doing. People have ad blockers. Print advertising has done that. It's dropped right off. The revenues from advertising in the industry are completely gone. And so you need to find a new way of advertising. That's native advertising. There's lots of different words for it. Sponsored content, advertorials, content marketing. Basically, it's a way of disguising your advert as if it's new so people don't realize it's an advert. Like this. This is an article from The Telegraph about people who are quite young who can now afford to buy houses. Isn't this fantastic? They wouldn't have been able to. Now they can. But it's not an article. It's an advert from HSBC. And the only way you can tell is that it says HSBC in the bottom corner there. Otherwise, you'd think it was an article. This is today's Daily Mail. You'll see in the sidebar of Shane, there's one that says sponsored. Click on it, and here is an article written by a company promoting a film. The entire article is not written by the Daily Mail at all. It's from that company, and you can only tell because it says sponsored in the middle there. Here's the Telegraph. They've got an entire section of their site for good news. These aren't stories written by the Telegraph. They're written by companies who are paying the newspaper to put that story in there. BuzzFeed do it. It's where they get 100% of their revenue, and they got wrapped by the Advertising Standards Agency because you couldn't tell the difference between their stories and their adverts. And sometimes it massively backfires. This is The Atlantic, which took an advert from Scientology, which looks so indistinguishable from an Atlantic article. It looked like the Atlantic were endorsing Scientology. They got a massive kickback off the back of this. I'm sure you've all seen this. This is 12 different local newspapers or more than that. This is the front page, except this isn't a front page. This is a wraparound ad. This is actually an advert made to look exactly like the front page of the newspaper. If you buy that paper, do you recognise that what you're seeing is an advert and not editorial? I'd argue you don't. It even happens in The Guardian. So let's look at The Guardian here. Bottom of an article in The Guardian, you've got these related stories from around The Guardian, things that are very similar to the story that you're reading to read a bit more. Then you see this section at the bottom, which looks like it's the same. It looks like it's just other articles from The Guardian, but they're all ads. Two of them there are for the Telegraph and TSB. The third one is for a scam product to try and cure IBS. And the fourth one is a PPI scam on The Guardian. This are all put there by Outbrain, Taboola, their advertising aggregates. They put this kind of content there. This should be a big problem. This should be shocking to people because we expect a separation in newspapers between editorial content and business content and advertorial, the stuff that they're getting paid for. When that goes, you lose the trust in the fact that what you're reading is genuine news or whether it's an advert. Then it also leads to the rise of clickbait, the emotive language to try and make you click this advert so they're the ones who get the advertising money for it. You see the types of attention-grabbing stories. The problem with that is those techniques then go on and feed the fake news propaganda that we saw during the American election. Fake news was essentially weaponized clickbait. It was using all the same emotional techniques in clickbait, but with a propagandist element. These things exist because native advertising and clickbait softened the ground for it. But here's the twist. I look into this stuff a lot. I write about PR an awful lot, or I write about why the news contains certain stories a lot. And I don't think native advertising is as bad as something else I see the majority of the time in the newspapers, and that's general just PR. Here's the front page of the Daily Mail again. Right next to the sponsored story, we've got this story about your diet, and it's actually a press release from a nutritionist. There is no sponsored on there. There is no line at the top to say this came from a nutritionist. This is word for word a press release paid for, given to a newspaper who print it without questioning it. This happens all the time. Here's 3 of the stories from today's news. These are press releases given to a newspaper who, because they haven't got the time or the money to actually do proper journalism, they'll just print what they're given. They won't change a word of it. They're printing it verbatim. Let's compare that to native advertising. Well, the problem here is native advertising, the newspaper are the ones getting money, and at least they tell you they're doing it. When it comes to PR, which is the majority of the rest of the news by and large, or the majority of the commercial impact on the rest of the news, they don't tell you it ever happens. And this means that you might be outraged by native advertising. You're not outraged by PR because they don't tell you honestly that they're doing it. They're not professional in their unprofessionalism. You never know about it, and people don't talk about it, and it slips under the radar. Unless you follow my blog where I talk about it from time to time. Thank you.
That's good.